Welcome to the G-Spot.
Five, four, three, two, one.
Hello everybody, and welcome to Dynamic GT League's G-Spot for the 46th iteration of it. For those that don't know what the G-Spot is, it's the place that, I was going to say it's the weird and wonderful place, which it kind of is, but it's where us in the DGT League can have a look at some of the weird and wonderful things that happen within the Dynamic GT League races. So whether it be silly things, funny things, dangerous things, things we see on the race video and doing commentary and we go, holy shit, what happened there? And we can have our butchers at it. Or, for the more practical reason for the tool is, if somebody puts a report in, we can have a look at it on here. Once it's been dealt with and the stewards have made their decisions, we can go through it and show all of the information in here. Now, normally I would have Ray on the G-Spot with me. However, apologies to everybody and Ray that I have been so busy lately that I have not been able to get the G-Spots done in a timely fashion. So when me and Ray are doing commentary, the G-Spots have not been available to us to commentate on. So yeah, apologies for that. Hopefully things will quieten down a little bit and I'll be able to get them back in line. So for anyone that is wondering, for example, there was a report placed in race 6 of the championship we've just done, which is finished, and obviously there was race 6, 7, 8 and 9, so clearly I am a few weeks behind on the G-Spot. I think it was from race 6 anyway. That's what we've got on the screen, so that's what I'm saying. So yeah, so we'll get to have a look at a couple of those bits. But once again, apologies for it being so delayed. Now, as we get ready for the next championship as well, into the Suzuki Swifts, just a reminder, it is a Gold Star Championship, everybody, so no ramming and punting and shunting. The normal rules apply, so don't be surprised if we do have a few more G-Spots on that one as well. Right, I'm going to try and not waffle too long because I'm about to do loads of it as I explain everything that we're going to get to see. And as you can tell on the screen, there's 5 things for us to have a look at. So let's not hang about, shall we? Let's crack on. 1 race 6 report, unsafe or not? Well, it's a good question. Okay, so this from race 6 from ArtPal 2047. Is it an unsafe return to track by Gary? Felt it was at the time as 2 cars were coming up to the chicane. For reference, at 31.46, I went off and took my time returning to track to avoid another driver. Well, let's see what the stewards say. And they say Gary goes off at turn 1 and rejoins at the next corner on the left hand side. ArtPal passes Gary on the right at the following chicane, but makes minor contact and then spins. Now, the steward's verdict is that no penalty applies. This was not an unsafe return to track. There were no cars immediately behind Gary when he rejoined, and he stayed left to leave space for ArtPal on the right. Now, in addition, this is a brilliant opportunity or example of what the G-Spot is for. Just off the wording of those two, like the driver's report and the steward's decision, you get a little bit of an idea of what happened, but you don't get to see it in all its glory. So what we're going to do here is we're going to have a look at it in as much glory as we can find. Hopefully there's no holes in it though. Right, okay, so we're going to jump on with Gary then. So he comes round turn 1, he's got slightly knackered tyres, he runs a bit wide and he's trying not to spin it. And yes, we can see 2 cars approaching. He does return to the track, and then ArtPal comes past, tiny bit of contact, and then ArtPal spins off. Now, we'll have a look at it. I do look here as well. Gary does slow down. It's almost like he's trying to process, okay, have I done something wrong now? I don't think I have, and carries on. So we see it from Gary's view, or at least from the bonnet view. Yeah, off he goes. But one of the things here is a driver that goes off the track does have to return to track at some point, and when they do they do it safely? And it's deemed that Gary does. He's fully in control of his car when he returns to the track. He's actually done brilliantly. Now, as Twilight is approaching, Twilight can see a car in the distance, is aware he's going to be returning to track at some point, gives him plenty of space and drives around him. Now, for Art Pal, he can also see that Gary may be a little bit blinded there, but is going to be approaching. Art Pal goes to take the racing line, then realises he can't. Now, we'll add a bit more information to this in a moment. So we see Art Pal there spinning. So Gary here, we've seen other returns to track recently where drivers have lost control of the car, but Gary gets control of the car, stays left, gives Art Pal space at the corner, and unfortunately there's a bit of contact, but that's not on Gary as far as we're concerned. So looking at this, we as stewards will look at it and go, okay, these two cars have got time to see that there's a car ahead that's gone off, and that car's got to return to track at some point, and Gary does so safely. Now Art Pal might disagree, but Gary hasn't done anything wrong there. He was perfectly entitled to return to the track in the way that he did. Now, had Twilight and Art Pal been considerably closer, then it would have been a very different situation. However, both Twilight and Art Pal have had time to see that there is a car off the track, and that car is going to be returning to track. So one example I like to give in these kind of situations is, imagine we are on a straight. And a good example is the top of Eau Rouge going onto the Camel Straight. Sometimes you may get a car after the kink just go a bit wide and end up on the grass. Now, if you are approaching the straight and you can see ahead of you that there is a car on the grass on the left, then it would be wrong of you to hug the white line on the left hand side of the track as you pass that car, because that car at some point is going to need to return to track. So the right thing to do is, once you've seen that car is off the track, to move over in case they do want to be able to return to track. So maybe I should give an example of that, a visual example of that at some point, but that's not to say that anyone can just return to track at any point. That's obviously not the situation. That's where unsafe returns would come into it. But there are scenarios where a driver like Gary has the right to return to the track as long as they do so in a safe manner, and in this occasion he has done it in a safe manner. He's in control of his car. He hasn't lost control of his car like we saw with Rich, I think recently, where he was trying to, at Suzuka, where he was trying to give space, and he had a massive wobble on the curb, and as he was coming back onto the track and across the road he went. So yeah, in this occasion, not an unsafe return to track. Now, what Twilight did is what I would expect a driver who is approaching the scene to do. Realise there's a car off, realise that car could come back on, and give them space to do so. Now, with Art Pal and Gary, had Gary gone for the second corner on the right, if he'd have gone for the apex there, then 100% would have been an unsafe return, because he'd come back to track and gone for the corner, but that's not what has happened here. Okay, Ray, what's your view on that one? Yeah, that's about right. Although, actually, no, that's more insight than Ray usually gives. Ray usually goes, yeah. Okay, right, let's crack on with the next one. I'm going to get killed for that, aren't I? Let's crack on with the next one. E2, race 8, bump to pass. Okay, so the reports from Jimmy says, I feel like it was a bit of a bump to pass, not making the apex and dropping me back 3 places as a result. Okay, so this one involved SRI, and as always, any admin that is involved in an incident has 0 input in the steward's conversations and decision in any incident they're involved in. Okay, so the steward's view, SRI makes an overtake on Jimmy. There is minor contact at the apex and Jimmy ends up on the grass. The steward's verdict is no penalty. Neither driver was at fault. SRI was within fair range to attempt an overtake. He did run slightly wide at the apex, but was in control of his car and still left enough space on the exit, you should say there. The contact that put Jimmy off was just unlucky. Now, this again is a very good example of, without having the footage to look at, it would be difficult for people to perhaps understand exactly what has happened here. Now, I can fully appreciate why Jimmy has put this report in, because it was definitely an interesting one to have a look at. So let's have a look now. Now, a couple of things to make note of is Jimmy, unfortunately, goes a little bit wide in this corner coming up and has to get way off the throttle, and it costs him a lot of time. Ray then closes right up, doesn't try anything too risky here, but he's right up Jimmy's rear end and then goes for the move up the inside. There's a tiny bit of contact, difficult to see from this angle. Jimmy gets sideways on the grass, and Nelly also gets a bit out of shape. So looking at it from Jimmy, so as I said, it gets a little bit deep here, and this really closes the gap up. Now, from Jimmy's view, I can fully understand that it might look like a bit of a dive bomb or something like that, but we'll see from the other views it isn't really. So as he was about to turn in, realised he was there, did turn in, and then turned in again. Bit of contact, runs a little bit wide. Okay, so we see it from SRI's view. So here's the gap coming down. Now, SRI, I would say at this point, a bit far away to try and make a move into Dingle Dell, which is this corner, but now is within fair range and shows his intentions and goes for the move up the inside. Leaves plenty of space on the mid and exit of the corner. So as we see from Jimmy here, from that view, it does look like SRI comes in a bit hot, but it isn't really. He is there. And he's in fair range, as we said, to attempt the overtake. So at this point, SRI is within fair range to attempt the overtake. So Jimmy should be aware that it could happen. SRI goes for the move. Yes, there's a bit of contact, but that's the key point now. SRI has left plenty of space on the outside, and it's unfortunate that Jimmy has made a turn in for the corner, which he's entitled to do at some point, but when he's done that, there has been a little bit of contact. Now, had SRI not been able to leave any space on the exit of the corner, it would be a completely different scenario. In this scenario, though, he is able to do that. The opportunity to make the overtake was on, and it is massively unfortunate for Jimmy that he's ended up dipping a wheel in the grass and losing a couple of places as well. Hopefully that was a fair enough explanation of that one. Right, let's get ready for this next one. It's gonna be a shocker. Right, let's go. Free, unsafe, hell yeah! Now, we're gonna ride with Rich Blues here, and I will mention nobody reported this. Rich gets big time sideways, little tap by Gary afterwards, getting sideways. And then this, right into the line of 4 cars. Okay, if you ever want a definition of an unsafe return to track, this is definitely it. Twilight's done so well to avoid that. Nelly's done well to avoid it as well. There may have been a bit of contact in there, but it's one of the, there was. Critical also just about managed to avoid it. So we see Rich get sideways, around it goes. Now at this point, Rich really needed to just hold it there, but reverses onto the track into the line of 4 cars. That is 100% an unsafe return to track. Now, as I mentioned, no one reported that, which means that the stewards can't really take any action. The only thing that the stewards would be able to do is to go, okay, that's not good. The admins should have a word with Rich about that one, so to make sure it doesn't happen again. Don't know exactly what was happening for Rich at that point. I don't know whether there was some frustration in there or what. But yeah, definitely 100% unsafe return to track. And had Rich been reported for that, I think even if, he wouldn't have been able to wait, but even if he'd have done his best to make it up to the drivers, he may still have been in receipt of a penalty there, because that was definitely a bad move there, Rich. It wasn't good, I'll be honest. You can now tell the wife you are officially a bad boy. Right, let's move on to the next one quickly, shall we? G4, safe waiting. Okay, we're going to ride on board with Nelly, following Gary, and very close, same corner as SRI and Jimmy, really. A little bit of contact there from Nelly, but then unfortunately Nelly slows down to let Gary come back through. It results in quite a big crash, and then the driver somehow managing to continue on. Okay, so we'll look here from Nelly's view. You can see there's a little bit of touch. Gary goes wide. Nelly gets off the throttle, bit on the brakes, off the throttle again. Now, I don't know whether he was trying to avoid hitting Gary or whether he was trying to wait for him. But, I mean, one thing I would say is if he was trying to wait, definitely not the right place to try and do it. Gary's done everything he can to try and hold on to this and keep going. But we are going to sort of look at it in a little bit more detail in a moment. So, for Bob, as he comes around the corner, you've got Nelly slowing down there in a part of a racetrack where you would not expect anyone to be braking. It's an acceleration zone, so nothing Bob could do to avoid that. Same for Jimmy. Jimmy's blind to it, nearly gets through, but then just tagged the back of Nelly, and Nelly manages to stay ahead. So I'll have a quick look off board here. So yes, there's a little bit of tack. So Nelly needs to wait for Gary. Now I don't know if he's aware that that's what he needed to do, but we have got Nelly now off throttle and now back on throttle a little bit, but he is going to come back off the throttle. He's on the brakes, so I don't know if he is thinking, oh, I've got to wait for Gary, but if he is, this is 100% the wrong place to do it, because as I mentioned, it's an acceleration zone and there's nothing that Bob could do. So as this plays on, you see, yeah, Bob can't do anything about it. And now for Nelly, what really should have done is got round the left-hander coming up and then waited off the racing line. So once we've got the contact from Bob, that contact is not Bob's fault, and the contact does send Nelly towards Gary and make secondary contact there. But again, that can't be put on Bob, and the contact there from Jimmy onto Nelly as well also can't be put on Jimmy, because they've been caught out by a car braking at a part of a racetrack where nobody should be braking, and we'll see it again here. So at this point, there's no way that any driver could be prepared for a car ahead to be on the brakes at this point. Even having seen a car go off, this isn't an area to wait for a car. So as this approaches, yeah, Jimmy would be completely blind to the fact that Nelly has slowed down. Bob hasn't got the time to react, makes the contact with Nelly, as I said, but nothing Bob could do about that. It happens so fast. At this point, Jimmy is well within his rights to go for that gap. He's ended up with an opportunity there, and then Nelly's in front of him and he's not at fault for that collision. So as we get to the end there, what also happens is Nelly ends up ahead of those four cars. So in all its glory, what should have happened there is once Nelly has tagged Gary, continues on, gets round the left-hand corner, moves off the racing line and slows down and waits for Gary. Do it in a safe location. Now, if Nelly was preparing to avoid Gary potentially spinning back onto the road, I can kind of understand that, but at the same time, it'd have been better off just going for it, just boot it, given that part of the track, because by applying the brakes, it 100% increases the risk of catching out the cars behind and a collision happening like we saw. So whether that was Nelly trying to wait for Gary or Nelly trying to avoid Gary, unfortunately it was the wrong decision to make in that scenario. What also should have happened is Nelly should have waited for Gary. So even though there was the secondary impacts and Nelly got spun out by Jimmy, Nelly still needed to wait for Gary because he did nudge him off the road, and that didn't happen. So in this scenario, had it been reported by Gary, for example, then a penalty could have been applied to Nelly for that because he didn't wait for Gary after knocking him off. Now he may argue, I mean, I'm hypothesizing here, that Nelly could perhaps argue, says, well, I was going to wait for him, but then I got took out. Okay, that just to clear things up, because you've been taken out doesn't mean you then wouldn't have to wait for that driver. You still would have to do so. Okay, if there's any questions about that incident, or if Nelly wants to add any input, or anybody else wants to add any input, feel free to do so, because obviously I'm only hypothesizing about what drivers may or may not be thinking, and I can only go off what I'm seeing on the track, which is we had one car nudge another car off the road, the offender then being on the brakes at a point of a racetrack where those cars behind have got no chance to react to it, and the ensuing crash happened. Okay, right, let's move on to is it the last one? It is, yeah, it is, it's the last one, so let's go with pitting's easy, isn't it? It's dead easy. I want that one. I want that lane there. I want that lane. Oh dear. Oh, back it up. Oh, go forward. No, back it up. Oh, no. Oh, back it up. There, we'll go forwards now. That foot. Oh, bloody hell. Yeah. Now you know why Ray mentioned about it being a bit like Austin Powers. Okay, so our path very lucky here. Turns in, he just goes straight on when he's on the brakes there. Now, what happens to his car here? You'll see that he's trying to accelerate and turn left, and his car's actually turning right. This is a feature of a lot of Gran Turismo games over the years. Now, it's quite amusing this, but that, it's something that has bugged me big time over the years. With some of the GT games, and I don't just mean like Sport and 7, I mean we're going back GT3 and on. GT4 and 5 were bastards for it as well. You could have a crash and go off, and you could be literally like slightly at an angle to a barrier, and you'd be, so let's say like the barrier was on the right of Artpal there, and he's turning left and he's trying to accelerate, and the front corner would touch the barrier, and basically the car would just turn into the barrier like it did for Artpal there. And it is fucking annoying because I mean, I can't say I've ever driven a car up a barrier, but I kind of get the feeling that if you did that, you'd probably rip off a bit of the front end, but the car would generally go in the direction you might want. But yeah, it's one of the I don't know if there's a setting you can change on the game for the wall dynamics or not, but yeah, it's a frustrating situation. I mean, on some of the really older games like GT4, you could literally be parallel to a barrier and be rubbing against it and try and turn away from it, and it would just turn into it, and you'd end up nose into the barrier, even though a moment before you'd been parallel to it. It is something that did really used to piss me off. Now, it's massively unfortunate for Artpal there, but hilarious for us to watch. But also goes to show that pitting isn't easy. Just ask Jimmy and Connor from last championship. Oh no, it was earlier this championship, wasn't it? Yeah, it was Road Atlanta, where he hit the wall and it spun him round. It can happen. Pitting is not easy at all. Right, okay, that's just about enough waffle for me. Talking of waffles, I'm getting a bit hungry. So yeah, that's the end of this G-Spot. Thanks for watching, listening. You know what to do: like, subscribe, notifications bell, and all that ding dong. And hopefully we'll have some more fun stuff for you to look at in the next G-Spots. And don't forget, drivers, if things do happen in the race that you perhaps want explaining, or you want to, like, you don't think it's necessarily worthy to go to the stewards, but you might think it's worth having a look at, or you want an explanation on something, feel free to send it to the page and mention for the G-Spot, and then we'll see if we can find it. Right, have a good one, everybody, and we'll see you all again soon.